The Torah tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu was being nursed by his mother, and then Vayigdal Hayeled, the boy grows up, Yocheved brings him to Bas Paroi, and she raises him as a son. Then the pasuk says, Vayigdal Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayiba Yom Mohem, in those days, Moshe Rabbeinu grows up, he goes out to his brothers, and the story how he sees an Egyptian striking a Yid, and he goes and he strikes the Egyptians, etc. On this second pasuk, Vayigdal Moshe, Rashi says, V'aloi kvar ksiv, but didn't it say already, Vayigdal Hayeled, the boy grew up? Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Loi, so Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Loi explains, the first time it means he grew up in height, the second time it means in rank and greatness, Paro appointed him over his household. And the question is, what was bothering Rashi? If you learn the psukim, simply it sounds like the first Vayigdal is that he was weaned, he grew up from nursing by his mother, and as a result of that, the mother is now bringing him to the daughter of Paroi. And the second time is he grows up, it's obviously many years later, he's already at the stage where he could go and save a Yid from being tortured by the Egyptians. So what was bothering Rashi? Why does Rashi even have to explain this second Vayigdal Moshe? Also, Rashi doesn't usually start off with a question. In this case, Rashi starts off, but doesn't it say already Vayigdal Hayeled? Why over here does Rashi start off with a question? Also, if Rashi is focusing on the way the first Vayigdal Hayeled means that he grew up in age, so why does Rashi say Bakoimo in height specifically? I mean, a little baby after he's weaned, so he grew in size, he grew intellectually, he could speak now and other things. Why is Rashi focusing on this idea that he grew in height? Also, why does Rashi focus on, if we're already speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu's importance, why specifically being appointed over Pari's household? The Rebbe also asks why Rashi needs to quote Moshe, Vayigdal Moshe in his Dibra Maschil, and finally, why was it important to mention that it's coming from Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Loi? Now, seemingly we could say that Rashi is trying to tell us that this second Vayigdal Moshe, we should know that it doesn't mean in time that he grew in age, because if that's the case, then the Torah should have told us how much older Moshe Rabbeinu got. And that's why Rashi has to tell us that the second Vayigdal means in L'Gdula, it means in rank. But if that's the case, then why is it even relevant to explain that the first Vayigdal, why is it relevant at all to mention the first Vayigdal, if all Rashi is trying to explain to us is that this Vayigdal doesn't mean in age? And why does Rashi have to start explaining to us that the first Vayigdal means in height? And generally, this whole idea that the second Vayigdal means in rank or in greatness and so on is something that we could have understood from other places without Rashi's explanation. We find a similar idea by Yitzchak where it says twice Vayigdal. Why does Rashi have to tell us that the second Vayigdal would mean in greatness or in rank? So the Rebbe explains that what's bothering Rashi actually is something else completely. The pasuk says Vayi Bayom Mohem was in those days Vayigdal Moshe Rabbeinu grows up. In which days is those days? The previous pasuk just said Vayigdal Hayeled, that the boy grew up, which we thought means that he was weaned, he's no longer nursing. So in those days he grows up and he's going out to his brothers, etc. He's now Vayigdal means in greatness. How much in rank could he be going up if he's a 2-year-old boy? And this is why Rashi tells us, no, the first Vayigdal does not mean that he's a 2-year-old boy, that he was just weaned. The first Vayigdal actually means that he grew up in height. He's already a very tall, or he's already almost a full-grown person. The second one is L'Gdula, which means in rank. In other words, this rank now makes sense that after he's grown up, physically grown up, so now the second one could be in rank. In other words, Rashi's main chiddush over here is not regarding the second Vayigdal, it's actually regarding the first Vayigdal, that the Vayigdal doesn't mean that he stopped nursing, as we originally thought, but Vayigdal means that he's now grown up many years after nursing. Now we can understand that after he's already grown up, so the second Vayigdal could mean in rank. And that's why Rashi starts off with a question. But doesn't it say already Vayigdal Hayeled? In other words, it's because of this second pasuk Vayi Bayomim Oheim, we now have a problem. But what happened Vayigdal Hayeled? Doesn't that mean a little tiny boy that's 2 years old? So that's why Rashi says no. The Vayigdal Hayeled means he grew up in height. Now, how is it possible that Moshe Rabbeinu stayed more than the 2 years of nursing by Yocheved? How does Bas Paroi allow him to stay for so long? Says the Rebbe, this is simply understood. that surely Yocheved, having had Moshe for 2 years, she's not so ready to give him up so quickly. So obviously she's going to try to do anything and everything to try to convince the daughter of Paroi to keep Moshe Rabbeinu by saying things such as, it's going to be very difficult for the child, very harmful for the child, to have to be removed from his nurse and so on and so forth. So for a number of years she could keep this up. But that's why Rashi says, but when by Yigdal, when he grows up, Bekoima, when he's now fully, now he's grown up in height as well, so now she has no choice anymore, and she has to bring him and give him back to Bas Pari. But how old could he be already over here at this point? The Rebbe asks. So at the very most, you might say 11 years old, 12 years old, and so on. So we still have the question, what kind of rank could he be given at this point? And this is why Rashi doesn't just say he's given chashivus, that he's just given any sort of importance, so we may think might mean that he now got some sort of position in the government or so on. The Rashi says, Sheminol Pari al Beisa, he just got a specific task of being appointed over Pari's household. But we're not speaking about governmental things. Now, why is Pari going to choose someone so young to give him over this important task? This is what Rashi hints with the words Vayigdal Moshe, quoting the word Moshe as well. Because Moshe, by mentioning the name, this shows generally when you mention a name, when it was not necessarily even to mention, is representing endearment, being precious, especially by the daughter of Pari, which always reminds her that this is the one that she drew out of the water, took out of the water, her hand had stretched to get him out of the water, and this is why she would be convincing her father, because he's so precious to her, she'd be convincing her father Pari to give him this task, this job, over Pari's house. And in order for this to make even more sense to us, that just because you find favor in someone's eyes, you're going to be getting a job that seemingly is not really according to your age or level or whatever it is. This is why Rashi brings that the one who said this is Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Loi. Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Loi was so extremely poor that the Gemara describes he didn't even have enough, he didn't have a cloak for himself and his wife, two separate ones. They had to share the same one. There was an occasion where Rabbi Yehuda couldn't go to join the public fast because he didn't have clothes. And nevertheless, because he found favor in the eyes of the government, he was appointed as the Rosh HaMedabrim, the one who should always speak first in any sort of setting, as well as he became the Poisek in the house of the Rebbe, in the house of the Nasi, by instructions of the government. So what do we see over here is that sometimes, even though externally someone might not seem to get a certain fitting for a certain job, but because of finding favor, he gets that specific task. In a similar way, Moshe Rabbeinu over here, even though he is so young, nevertheless, because he is raised by Bas Pari as a child, Pari ends up giving him this task. The Rebbe now moves on to the Yeina Shel Torah. We know that all of the inyanim of Moshe Rabbeinu begashmis are obviously nishtalshel from the way that things are beruchnius. Now these two ideas that Rashi mentions, that the first Vayigdal is Lekoima in height, the second one is that he's appointed over Pari's household, really express two different ideas in the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. In order to explain this, the Rebbe first focuses on another pasuk regarding Moshe Rabbeinu and what the Zohar says about it. When Moshe Rabbeinu was born, it says his mother saw that he was kitoiv, that he was good. The Zohar brings two opinions. Rabbi Chia says it means that he was born already having a bris. Rabbi Yossi says that the light of the Shekhinah was shining on him. The whole house was filled with light. Now, both of these opinions are true. Both happened. It's just each one of these, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chia, are focusing on a different one. Which one was the main thing? And the Rebbe's father explains that Rabbi Chia, whose level is Yisoid, now Yesoid is connected to the idea of the bris milah. That's why he is the one that focuses on the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu already had his bris, was born with a bris. Rabbi Yossi, on the other hand, which is on the level of Malchus equaling the idea of Shechina, so he focuses on the idea that the light of the Shechina was shining. In simple words, says the Rebbe, what this means is like this. Moshe Rabbeinu has two ideas. This is his own perfection, his own greatness. He's the greatest of mankind. He's completely connected to Hashem, completely higher than the world. And then there is his shleimus, his perfection, as a roya, as a faithful shepherd of the Yidden, giving the Yidden ruchnius and gashmius and so on. Both of these things, says the Rebbe, were right when Moshe Rabbeinu was born. On the one hand, he's born circumcised already, which represents his own shleimus. The nefesh halakista neshama is shining already in a complete way inside of Moshe Rabbeinu. He doesn't even have that concealment of the arla, which is the Yetzer Hara. On the other hand, there's the idea of the house being filled with light, which represents he's filling the world with light already, being mashpia in the world already as well. So now going back to the Sfiros, Rabbi Chiya is on the level of Yesoid, which Yesoid is more removed from the world. It's more about connection with Elikos. So the emphasis is more about Moshe Rabbeinu having the bris. It's his own perfection. On the other hand, Rabbi Yossi is the Sfira of Malchus, which Malchus is all about creating and giving life to the Oilamos. So he emphasizes the idea that the house was filled with light. Says the Rebbe, this is what Rashi is also hinting to with Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Loi saying that when it says Vayigdal twice, the first one is Lekoima in height, the second one is that Paroi appoints him over his household. And the Rebbe explains that Moshe Rabbeinu, because of the level of Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Loi, he recognizes both levels of Moshe Rabbeinu. The one of Lekoima, which is his own perfection, his own height, his own spiritual greatness, but he also, Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Loi also says that the second Vayigdal is that we know Pari al-Beisa, that Pari is appointing him over his household, that is a hashpah over other people, and as the Rebbe explains in the Sikha as well, that Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Loi represents a level in Elikus that actually combines both of these points both together.